What's up guys, Ed Ricker here, blasted with sunlight, but today is such a nice day that I wanted to test out the Mavic Pro and the Phantom 4 Pro with the new PyTech landing pad for the drones. So this is going to help us to perhaps take off a little bit smoother in grassy situations or maybe rocky and gravelly situations, but it's also going to help us perform a more accurate return to home function with the drone's downward positioning sensors. So this is the landing pad from PyTech, I think that's how you say it anyway, and I actually got this from lighttake.com. And so if we open it up, there is the landing pad, and we have the landing pad, we have reflective strips that we can apply to the landing pad for better visibility, and we have 3 stakes that almost look like stakes you would use for a tent or something like that. So we're going to stake this into the ground because it's so freaking windy out here and see just how well this works as a launch pad. As you know, both the Mavic Pro and the Phantom 4 Pro have gimbals that are really, really low to the ground. And so to have them calibrate properly, we need to kind of have some sort of, flat surface, some even surface. And sometimes grass and leaves and stuff can get in the way of the gimbal calibration process. Also, the pattern and the color on the launch pad will help us to have a much more precise landing with those downward positioning sensors. Just make sure to put these stakes in as far as they can, because otherwise you run the risk of having your props hitting them if they're still too high up. The Mavic Pro and the Phantom 4 Pro both have downward vision positioning, so in order to get the most value out of that, we are going to launch 30 feet up before we move horizontally away from our launch space. That way it gives the cameras a chance to kind of take a picture of what's below them, and that's going to help it return to home more accurately. The reason why we're doing it out here in the grass though is because there's not a whole lot of difference in the grass from place to place, so it'd be interesting to see just how accurate it is returning to home in a place that doesn't have a whole lot of visual dynamics. So we're going to launch to 30 feet, just go up straight. I'm also going to set return to home altitude to 60 meters. So that's roughly 180, 190 feet. And that's how high it's going to be when it returns to home. I'm going to send it over there and then we'll see what happens. Okay, now I'm going to hit return to home. And here it goes. It's going over to the spot. It found it. Here we go. Okay, so I did not move the camera, so the point where it took off is here, and the point where it landed is here. I did that in editing. All right, let's try the Phantom 4 Pro and see how accurate that is for a return to home without the landing pad. Let's see how far away it was from where it took off. I think it did a pretty good job both ways. Okay, the drone is on and it calibrated its gimbal just fine, so let's do the launch. Okay, so it landed completely on it. I thought at the very end that it wouldn't, but it did. Very good. Now there's a lot of wind going on too, so you got to take that into account, that the wind is blowing the drone around a bit when it's taking off and when it's landing, but for the most part that worked out pretty well. All right guys, so it's a pretty simple product, and for its price point I recommend it just because it's good to have like that, but for you running gunners and people who really just want to get in and get out, you probably won't find much use for this. Now for its return to home functions and its precision landing and that sort of thing, it's good, but at the same time I personally don't ever return to home to completion. The only time I ever return to home is if I lose signal, and then at that point, at some point, I will regain control and then I land manually. So for me, I wouldn't use it for that, but definitely for taking off in beaches, for taking off in taller grass, leaves, gravel, it might really help to protect your drone and to allow that gimbal calibration to go through its entire process without hitting something. Now, if you do make it a habit of flying after sunset, then you might have issues seeing the ground very well, in which case your drone lights will reflect off of these reflective strips that you can apply to the landing gear. So that's a good thing. Oh, and by the way, if you want to fold this, basically it's just a turn maneuver. Turn one way with one hand and the other way with the other hand. And once it starts flexing, keep going, and eventually it folds in on itself. You should see 3 different edges on the side, and that's how it folds together to fit back in the pouch. Ta-da, bam. Anyway, thanks to Lightech for sending me this. I'm gonna tinker around with it a little bit more, but until next time, check out edricker.com for all the products and accessories I regularly use with the Mavic Pro and the Phantom 4 Pro. And as always, happy flying, guys.